Hey, this is Connor with Kyoto Fishing Company, and today we're going to be tying my furled-tailed clouser. This is a really simple fly, but again, kind of what we've been doing lately is showing you all some techniques rather than specific patterns. So I just want to show you all how I've been doing this tail. It's a good way to add flash to your flies as a kind of a different technique. So I hope you guys enjoy it. We're going to start off, the platform we're going to be tying on is a Gamakatsu 60-degree bend jig hook. Really like these flies. We've been tying on them for a long time. Myself, Garner, really all of us. It's just a great fly for bass and striper. So we're going to clamp this guy in the vise here. Thread is going to be that Vivus gel spun. Again, can't say enough about this thread. This is a 150 denier, so pretty thin but incredibly strong. Start your thread on the hook there. No need to go too far with it. And I'm kind of, you can see probably as I'm tying this, sometimes I'm spinning and unspinning it. Sometimes you want it more flat and sometimes you want it more corded up. So pay attention to that. That's a good thing to know that you can do with your thread. Is flatten it out or make it more of a kind of a rope. For weight on these, I really like, well, I mean any eyes really. But Andy Bowen, the owner of the store, turned me on to these nickel balls eyes. It's a hairline product. I really like these. They're not the heaviest, but they have a really smooth saddle, so they cinch down really well, and they're really durable. I like them more for their durability than anything, but they'll add a good weight to your fly. Come back just a little bit. First thing we're gonna do is tie these guys on, you know, maybe a quarter-inch back from that bend. You know, and if you've never seen a video on how to tie on dumbbell eyes, we're breezing through this pretty quick, but I'm sure those are out there. We're not going to go over that right now, but you're basically just doing some figure-8 wraps on there. Next thing I'm going to do, which is crucial to any fly with dumbbell eyes, is putting super glue on not only the dumbbell connection, but the rest of your thread wraps. It's going to keep this stuff cinched down really well and keep it from rolling around on your hook shank. And then the next thing you'll see me do is just check to make sure those are indexed to the hook shank. You want the eyes to be completely perpendicular to your hook shank, sticking off at right angles. Looks like I just cinched them down. Yeah. You got a little bit of time to play with it before your glue sets. I'm gonna put one more little dab on there, and I shredded my thread a little bit. It'll keep that all from coming unraveled. Okay. So I really like this material. I've been adding this to almost all of my striper flies for the past few years since I found out about it. This is UV Polar Chenille. Comes in a ton of great colors, but the UV silver specifically, I don't know what it is, and it's probably more me than actually the fish, but I love this color in the water. It's really great. So we're gonna do the tail of the fly with this stuff, but then we're also gonna do the body flash with it, so everything matches really nicely. And just a little bit about furling materials. If you've never done this before, it can be a little bit of an odd thing, but basically what we're going to do is we're going to twist the material in one direction and put it under tension, and then we're going to double that material up over itself and allow it to untwist. And when you do that, when you allow it to untwist onto itself, it's going to actually wrap around the other leg of the material. It's really hard to explain. But you'll see how it's done here in a second, and hopefully that makes it a little easier. And if you've ever tied a green weenie, it's the exact same, the exact same process of getting that tail on a green weenie. If you ever made furled leaders, it's the exact same as making furled leaders. It's really easy, but it's kind of a little bit of a different technique. So we'll show it to you here. The first thing you want to do is take this stuff. It is on a sort of synthetic stem. It's like a synthetic hackle. So cut you a section off, and you need double the amount of material, double the length that your end goal is going to be. So keep that in mind. We want maybe 1.5 times the length of the hook shank here. You know, think about a hackle tail or a flash tail on a Clouser Minnow. You want it to stick out past your wing. So try to get that as close as possible. You know, right here, I'm just ballparking it. We're gonna go about 5 inches. And so that means this is gonna shrink up to about 2.5 inches when everything is said and done. And it'll all make a lot more sense when we get the stuff tied on. So the tip of the material, you're just gonna tie that in right at the bend of the hook. And then leave your thread right there because you're gonna need to capture this material once you spin it up. So we've got quite a bit sticking off the back here. The next thing I'm gonna do is put the other end of the material, the loose end. This is we're gonna have to capture when everything's said and done. But we're gonna spin this in one direction. Spin it up, get some tension on it. And I'm just using some hackle pliers for this. I really like doing a dubbing twister for this, but I messed up and left my good hackle pliers at the house, so we're not gonna do that. And you can see it's starting to get tighter. It's starting to get some tension. And if I release right now, you see how it kind of wants to bind up on itself? If you've ever tied a bimini twist knot, it's the same principle here. So I'm just gonna make sure all the fibers are not too bound up already. And then we're gonna hold the midpoint and we're going to bring that material back to the hook bend. And then all you're gonna do is you're just gonna let go of the material. And you can see it wants to wrap around itself, right? So that is the tail of the fly. The key to this is you have to tie that loose end that's in the hackle pliers down, otherwise the whole thing's gonna come unraveled. So now I'm just gonna take my thread, it's already right there. I'm gonna come over the top, get you a nice tight wrap. This is gel spun, you're not gonna break your thread. And then take your hackle pliers off. Just continue to cinch that down really good. So there's your tail. Then you can see this material is kind of thin to begin with, but now it's doubled up. It's still got a lot of motion to it, but you've got double the strength of your original material. And I'm gonna cut off this tag. I got some crazy stuff sticking to the glue here, but trim any other fibers that are just hanging around. And then just kind of build a little transition. If you've got some fibers that are going all crazy, just wrap that down with the thread and get you a nice little transition, because this material, this polar chenille, is still really, really limp. So I like to put just a little bit of clump tail at the back of this fly to keep it from fouling. And then we'll wrap some flash up and do another clump of bucktail on the top, and it's done. So for the little foul guard here, I'm just gonna take a little bit of white. And this is a really nice tail that we got from Nature's Spirit. We get all of our bucktails from them. They've got some really, really good tails. I'm looking for some softer bucktails on this one, but I think as Jacob mentioned in an earlier video, you know, if you want some specific bucktails for a specific purpose, whether it's for hollow tying or for doing bulkheads, just call us. And if we know what you're looking for, we can pick ones that are going to work for you. So I'll just lay that out there for you. But cut a small piece of this. I'm going from the kind of the mid portion of the tail here. Cut a small section, about like so. The tips are all really even on this one because it's a good bucktail. So I'm going to pull any of the underfurs out. You don't want the short ones. And then I'm going to make this foul guard shorter than the tail by, I don't know, it looks like about 2/3 maybe, the length of the tail. I'm gonna cut that just a little bit longer. Boom. And then we're gonna do similar to like you would hollow tie. You're gonna take a loose wrap, kind of work your material around, and just spin that material around. You could probably leave this step out. I don't know how crucial it is, but I feel like it does help the fly foul a little less. That bucktail just adds some stiffness to the base of that that polar chenille tail. Okay, and again, you know, with any time I tie in bucktail, especially when you're not hollow tying and it's not doubled up on itself, I'm going to put some super glue right over those butts. It's just going to keep them from pulling out. Bucktail's really bad about that. So if you don't keep it glued into place, or if you don't use some method of making it more resilient, it'll just pull right out of your flies, especially after you have a few fish. Okay, so that's the whole tail section of the fly. Now we're going to add some more flash. That same UV silver polar chenille. I'm going to cut a small section off. Honestly, about the same length as the tail. And tie that in. And just wrap that up like you would a hackle. And honestly, the wraps don't have to be touching on this. If you want it to have a real full body, go ahead and make the wraps touching. If you want to save a little material, spiral those wraps just so they're a little wider than the actual material itself. And then you'll have enough for a couple flies every time you cut off a piece of this stuff. So I'll go ahead and cut the excess. Oh, my scissors are getting dull. Cut the excess, and that's probably enough to tie at least one more fly with. So, you know, don't throw this stuff away once you're done with it. All right, and then the rest of this is really simple. It's just like a Clouser Minnow. We're going to tie a clump of bucktail on the top, a clump of bucktail on the bottom, and you're done. The belly color is going to be white. The top color is going to be gray. This is kind of an old gray that I have that's still really nice. It's a darker gray than what I've been able to find lately. But any color, you know, olive and white, tan and white, chartreuse and white is one of our favorites. So first, and keep in mind the hook is upside down right now. So your belly color is going to go on top, and then your back or dorsal color is going to go on the bottom. I say top and bottom because it's not truly the top and bottom of the fly. The way we put this weight on the top of the hook shank is going to turn it into riding hook point up. So the top is going to become the bottom. But for purposes of this video, I'm going to refer to the orientation of the fly that it's in right now as top and bottom. So the belly color is going to go on top. We're going to cut a section a little bit bigger than what you did for the tail. White bucktail, and again, this is really good, so I'm not going to have to trash a bunch of these fibers. I don't know if you can see what's falling out of there, but it's not much at all. This is a really, really nice tail, really soft fibers. And then you want this belly to be about the same length to hit about the same spot that your tail does. So it all looks like one piece. So again, you're going to cover up about 2/3 of that tail material. And if I do that, that's going to leave all of that bucktail sticking out the front. So I'm just going to snip that off, give me a tie-in point. And then what I like to do with this bucktail is take a loose wrap around the actual bucktail. This can be a little difficult. And then tie that in front of the eyes. And then I'm going to come behind the eyes now and cinch that down pretty tight, because that's going to allow the belly color to flare out a little bit. If you've got a little too much flare, then back up on that tension a little bit, or add a couple more thread wraps to kind of let it lay down. And then you can see I've got this little fuzzball mess on the front, and I'm just going to cut that at an angle, and this will give your head a nice little taper to it. And just go ahead and take a few wraps over that. It doesn't have to be perfect because we got to add that gray to it still. Take a few wraps on there. And since this belly color is locked in with the eyes, don't worry as much about the super glue, but we are going to add it when we add the gray. So next is that back color, gray and white, just kind of a shad, general purpose shad here. If I can find some of this tail that's still good. I'm having to go up pretty high on it here. I got a little bit left. I haven't been able to find one this color. I really like this color. Okay, this one's not quite as good though, so I'm going to even these tips up a little bit. Here we go. And you can see now the base of it, there's two different lengths, but my tips are all pretty even where I'm comfortable with them being. This is just barely long enough to make this one happen, but I think it'll work out. And then this one, if you ever tied a Clouser Minnow, it's going to be the same. We're just going to tie this clump in front of the eyes. We're not going to tie it down behind the eyes. Just a tad bit more off. Okay. And I just kind of tease those fibers around the hook point. And again, same sort of deal here. Loose wrap around the actual bucktail is going to keep it all on top of the hook shank. And then come down nice and tight. That's why I like this gel spun so much, is you can really, really cinch down on it. Just a few wraps is all you need. And then I'm going to come back, try to do this so you can actually see it. Cut those ends at an angle. Kind of loosely tying them down to start with, getting that tension more as I go down to really knock them into place and give you a little bit of a better taper. It's hard to do. There's too much of a transition. And I'm going to have to build up a little bit of a head here just to make that a little cleaner. Whoops. There we go. I'm going to throw some super glue on there. And I'm going to even put it over those belly hairs. There we go. Throw you a couple half hitches or whip finishes on there, and you're good to go. And you can kind of roll this bucktail with your thumb and your forefinger, and it's going to help it kind of get into place and maintain that taper. And I'm going to set this top with my thumb, knock it down a little bit. You can kind of see I'm mashing my thumbnail into it there to keep those fibers from flaring up too much, because I had done a little too much with the thread there. But now it's got a really good profile. A lot of people want to wet their flies and then look at them while they're wet. That's not what your flies are going to do in the water. But if you wet them and then dry them and look at them, that's pretty accurate to the shape they're going to hold in the water, depending on the current. And you can also kind of do that by rolling those fibers. And that's exactly what we're looking for.